The first thing that I think it's useful to consider is, what are we really? Not what are we pretending to be, or what our advertisers and politicians and people who would seek to covertly manufacture our consent tell us we are, but what are we really? As a biological machine, as an entity, what are we evolved to do? I think there's a useful term here. It's called being a good evolutionary match. So, is our environment a good evolutionary match for the creature, for the entity that we are? And if it isn't, what's that going to do? If we are evolved, for example, to be in bands of 30 to 50 people, sharing common goals, sharing stories, recognizing each other, seeing each other, supporting each other, what would happen if we tried to move into bands of 500, of 5,000, of 50,000, or 50 million? Just that alone, what would happen? If we're not evolved as a biological machine to do that, what would happen to us? Yes, I know, we're more than biological machines, but how much more are we? If we do that which is natural to us, is it always good? No, that's called the nature fallacy. But generally speaking, is it not pleasurable? Is it not comfortable? Is it not fulfilling to do the things that we are evolved to do? This is called being in a good evolutionary match to the environment. So things like contribution within a tribe, things like significance within a tribe, things like having a purpose, having a goal, having objectives, and working together with others towards those objectives in a pro-social way. When we do these things, generally speaking, we feel good. If we are evolved as a creature, as a biological machine to do these things and we don't, how can we expect to feel? I would suggest that we can expect to feel anxious. We'll get these feelings inside of our bodies because we're not purely rational creatures. It's just wrong. It's a fallacy. It's a mistake to think of ourselves as rational when we're clearly not. We're also physical. We have feelings inside the body, a somatic experience, a somatic subjective experience. And when we do the things that we're evolved to do, generally speaking, we feel good. So if the body is recognizing, hey, I don't seem to be connecting the way I should be. I don't seem to have the social group I think I should have. I don't even have the recognition I believe I should have. Then feelings of anxiety would naturally transpire, right? Over time, if those needs were not being fulfilled and we tried in an unconscious way, sort of thrashing around unconsciously, like, I'm not sure what my needs are, but I think they vaguely seem to be over here in the direction of social recognition, of social contribution, maybe we would find a maladaptive way of meeting our evolutionary needs. Maybe we would go on social media and post pictures of ourselves, or we would join activist groups to try and contribute to a particular tribal narrative and a tribal objective to see if we could fulfill those goals. What would happen if we tried again and again to fulfill that need and it didn't work? Depression would be the end result, and a sense that we felt out of place, out of time. We didn't really know ourselves. We didn't really know who we are. We just didn't feel comfortable inside of our own skin. And doesn't that pretty much describe the subjective experience of most of the people living now in the modern world? The next thing I think we need to consider, especially in terms of mental health, is what our story is, what our grand narrative of ourselves is in a philosophical sense, in a spiritual sense, in a religious sense. I mean, if we're going to take anxiety and depression, these are the major mental health issues that people seek clinical assistance for. And you say, okay, this individual, psychology says this individual has a mental health issue, this individual has anxiety. And then we're going to seek to try and resolve anxiety or depression, bereft of any narrative beyond that, bereft of a narrative that includes the group that the individual resides in and the social system that the individual resides in, and just focus on the individual. How does that make sense? So we've got a couple of problems here. The first one that I would say that we need to look at is that we are not a good evolutionary match for the environment. The second one is the assumption that we are rational creatures when we clearly are not. We clearly do not function at a purely rational level. And then the third one I would say is this myth of the individual having individual problems. What if all of your mental health issues, whatever they were, body dysmorphia, anxiety, depression, rage, or OCD, or addictions, sex addiction, drug addiction, gambling addiction, what if these aren't purely to be understood as your problems, but are a broader symptom of a cultural malaise that are manifesting inside of you. I think the psychology sessions would look a little bit different, wouldn't they? That would be a much more revolutionary way to approach personal problems. So I think it is wise for us to start beginning to look at the possibility that we do not function solely as discrete individuals on our own. So in identifying these problems, that we're not living in a good evolutionary match. Our environment, our lifestyles are not a good evolutionary match for the biological entity that we are. That we're trying to enforce the myth of the individual on people. Like, you are an individual, your problems are unique, they're inside of you, they're not part of a global issue or a cultural issue or a systemic issue. It's all on you. Quite frankly, there is little psychology that actually backs that as a reality. Similarly, with living in a poor evolutionary match to our environments, if you look at biology, particularly evolutionary biology and anthropology, every tribe, every group of humans that goes too far out the bounds of what we're evolved to do ends up in serious trouble. They break out in anxiety, depression, rage, even war, even genocide, just to try and deal with these overwhelming feelings, this extremely distressing feeling of being in the wrong place at the wrong time and not knowing who you are, and then you're full of all these ugly emotions, these unpleasant sensations, and then you go, well, somebody must be to blame for this, let me find someone. And then you have whole narratives that are based around resentment and historical desire to bring justice to certain situations. And sometimes resentment is justified, and sometimes we should seek justice for historical wrongdoings, but largely speaking, that's not why people don't feel good. The other myth we need to overcome is the myth of reason and rationality. Man, woman, human is not a rational animal, not in principle. We're capable of reason. The more trained we are, the more disciplined we are, the more we meditate, the more we emotionally regulate and regulate our physiologies, the more capable we can become momentarily, fleetingly, of reason. We absolutely should aspire to reason and being rational, but let's stop pretending that we function solely as rational animals when we clearly don't. Then there's the myth of happiness. I would say we need to get rid of this. We need to say, look, you're not supposed to be happy all the time, and don't feel bad for feeling bad. Don't feel bad that you're not happy all the time. It's creating a tremendous amount of envy. It's creating a tremendous amount of hostility, frankly, because there's this sense that people are jockeying through social hierarchies that are based on limited resources, which is false, by the way. The thing that you need to feel good, forget about happy. Happy it's a very misleading category. It's almost a useless category because it obfuscates more than it clarifies. If you watch the Jordan Peterson-Slavoj Žižek debate, this was one of the key points that they both absolutely agreed on. It is not a useful category. It's ideological and it creates enormous suffering. But feeling good, feeling calm, being at peace, having a purpose, being able to go about your work, to contribute to the tribe, to contribute to others, not vaguely or symbolically, but in real life, and to see the reaction and to see the good effects of your deeds and your words and what you're capable of in the world, that's gratifying. You can be gratified, you can be satisfied, you can become peaceful, you can become sane. Forget happiness. And then finally, we're gonna have to find a spiritual narrative. You might not be comfortable with it, you might think it's silly, it might be beyond your self-perception as an ultra-rational atheist, but we are fundamentally evolved to be, it seems to be, to me, religious, spiritual creatures, and we must have some kind of spiritual religious narrative and some sort of discipline, some sort of a lifestyle that goes with that. Then we have to look at a simple truth. We've always had religious beliefs. Every society, all humans, everywhere, geographically, historically, across space, across time, has had some kind of grand narrative that goes beyond the material, that offers meaning, that offers significance. There are questions that human beings just have to answer in order to even begin to put mental health issues per se into any meaningful context. Questions like, what does it mean to be human? Why am I here? What is the purpose of life? How should a person live? There are so many givens now, there's so much complexity and so many layers of assumptions and implicit injunctions around what a person should be. Many of us, I would claim, us human beings, feel anxious because we are not happy, in inverted commas, happy. We don't match that social construct, that social category called happiness. Many of us are depressed because we're not happy. Many of us are sad because we're not happy, if you know what I mean. So you look and you go, this is the goal state. I look on social media, or I look at mainstream media, or I look around at the world, all the assumptions I'm being fed, this ideological soup that I'm constantly being force-fed every day inside my cultural narrative, and it says I should be happy. That's a moral judgment, by the way. You should be. Thou shalt be happy. How about no? You shouldn't be happy. It's a nonsense. There's no such thing as being happy all the time. Happiness is a fleeting, passing experience, and then it moves on. What if you lived from that place? What if everybody was living from the place of going, you know what? Nobody's happy, and that's okay. Nobody's permanently happy, and that's okay. Nobody's permanently in a good mood, and that's okay. You wouldn't have the expectation. So many of these things that people are saying are mental health issues, and they are mental health issues, but it's not the fault of the individual. It's not because the individual is broken down in some way and therefore needs fixing. Maybe we should consider that there is a cultural narrative that breeds an expectation that we simply can't match, we simply can't fulfill, and that's what's creating these feelings of being out of place, of being uncomfortable inside of our own skin, and not feeling like a fully formed self. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I hope that you found that useful, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Cheers.